Hello, I'm Makena Henriksen, the intern in the Blacksmithing Studio, and today I'm chatting with Ed Claypoole of Atlas Forge from Hopwood, Pennsylvania. Hi, Ed.
Hello, Mac. How are you?
I'm well. How are you doing?
Very good, thank you.
Great. Well, today we're going to ask you a few questions about your experience and education in blacksmithing. So first, I'm interested to hear if arts were a large part of your life growing up from the beginning, or if there were any specific influences or events that inspired you to become a maker.
Okay. Oddly enough, arts were not a part of my life at all. The way that I came to art was through objects. I like objects. I like things. I know that some people say things are out of style now, that experiences are in style, but I think that objects are enhanced by experiences and by people. So the greatest thing about objects is the connection we have to others. So that's how I came to art, with an object.
Neat, thanks. And as you decided to enter into the field of blacksmithing, was there any specific aha moment that led you to that material specifically?
Yes. I had actually started a company building weightlifting equipment. So I was versed in welding and pretty well versed in machine work, the basic machines. Now this was 40 years ago. So you had hand machines, not CNC and CAD equipment, but just basic hand machines, lathe, milling machine, surface grinders, the small shop, typical machines. I was doing some repair work for an old farmer up the road, and he was down at the shop and he picked up a little metal scribe I had on the workbench. And he said, "Oh, that's a nice little scribe." And I said, "Yeah, it really is, but it drives me crazy." And he said, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "I can't figure out how he made it. It was just a little scribe, 6 inches long, pointed on each end, square stock, hammered around, and it had a twist in the middle. And as a blacksmith, you'll know what I mean. Very fast twist in the center, slower out at the ends." Well, I knew it wasn't a weldment. I knew it wasn't made on a lathe or a milling machine. So I had no clue how it was made. And I said, "I can't figure out how they made it." And the old man looked at me and he kind of scratched his head and shook it. And he said, "As good as you are," he said, "I forget how blank, dumb, and young you are." I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, it's simple." He said, "A blacksmith done this." That's how he talked. "A blacksmith done this." I said, "What's that mean to me?" We didn't have a blacksmith in town. We'd never seen a blacksmith in my lifetime. And he said, "You know what an anvil is?" I said, "Sure. Coyote and the Roadrunner. I know what an anvil is." He said, "You ever watch Gunsmoke?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "The guy in back pounding on that anvil with a hammer, that's a blacksmith." He said, "They build a coal fire and they blow air into it to make it hotter. Then they heat the steel." He said, "Then he clamped this on one end and grabbed the other end and twisted it." That was it. That was literally it. I had to try it. Within a week, I was scrounging material to build a coal forge, but there were absolutely no materials. We had no internet. We couldn't even find a book then on blacksmithing, really. It was that bad. And people just laugh and say, "Man, you're really old." Yeah, I really am. Also, since I'm a blacksmith 40 years, I'm really strong too, so you better be quiet. We couldn't get resources. I spent the first year and a half trying to run a coal forge through an insulated 5-inch blue pipe. That'll give you a pretty good idea what happened. I spent my first year trying to see how much smoke I could inhale before I passed out, wondering how they could see through it to hammer, and also really curious as to how to get it out of the shop so I could actually see and work. But that's how I started.
Wow, that's a great origin story. Thank you.
Oh yeah, that's fabulous. It's called a waste of time, which is why I'm here talking for you.
Well, could you tell us a little bit about the path that your education took after that and how things came together to lead you to have your own forging business?
Yeah, I can. I should probably be a poster boy for craft and art schools because I have absolutely no education whatsoever. I started a business building weightlifting equipment just because I was on the weightlifting team in Butler and we had junk equipment. We had a piece break one night. I said, "We need some good equipment." And the guy said, "Well, why don't you build it? You work at a welding shop." I was a foreman at Welder Service down in Allison Park. They're out of business now. But I ran the shop. I didn't know how to weld. I just was able to run the shop and organize. But I started to think about it, and I knew about weightlifting, so I learned how to weld. I had one of the guys teach me, bought a little welder, bought a little drill press, and that's how I started the business. That just carried on. Once I found forge work and started, it took a while. But as I got better and better and a little more versed at forging, I tried to slant everything over. I wanted to get out of weightlifting and into forging, not so much welding, not so much machine work. I wanted to forge, I wanted to hammer. I had no one to teach me. We had no other blacksmith around. I didn't have the resources and to try to find anyone. So I did what you do if you don't think you have resources. I went to the shop and I just tried everything over and over and over and over and just failed repeatedly. But I learned that failures are just a part of life. They're good. Any failure is a learning process. Repeated failures are signposts on the road to success, if that doesn't sound too hokey. But what I did was I wasted a lot of time, an awful lot of time. It took me years to learn things that I could have learned in a month, literally, or a couple of months. But if I had had a place like Touchstone to come to, some instructors like this, if I would have had you to teach me back then, it would have made such a difference in my life, in my evolution. I had to stumble for a long time. I used to say that I got paid to go to school. What that meant was I would take a job that I didn't know how to do. And I did it all the time. And then I figured it out while getting paid, but not very much per hour whenever you really thought about it. But I learned how to do the job and I learned how to think. And the more you learn how to think, you know from the shop, you build on it and things become easier and easier and quicker. I have people talk to me now, other blacksmiths, and they say, you're really good. And some people call me a master blacksmith. I don't believe any of that. I think I'm a well-experienced beginner. And at 62 years old, I'm just to the point where I can really start to learn. If I don't wear out, I might get pretty good in another 30 or 300 years, but we'll see what happens.
Well, cheers to that. I hope it works out.
Yeah.
I'm sure it will. Well, one of the great things I think about Touchstone is that we often do have students of many ages. It's a good environment for that. Can you tell us a little bit about how you cross paths with Touchstone?
I think Miss Stephanie that crossed paths with me, and I don't know how she found me. It had to be from some of the other blacksmiths because that would have been about 13 years ago or 14 years ago. And I was well known in the blacksmith community by then, but realized, there a lot had happened since a 40-year ago start. And Stephanie was always trying to talk me into doing exhibitions, but I was a bit shy for that. She probably will not believe she has me on camera now. And I did finally do a couple things here, but back at that time, they wanted a blacksmith to represent Touchstone for a juried art show at Hidden Valley. And Steph asked if I could produce a small body of work to take and be able to speak a little bit intelligently to people, try to control myself and not embarrass them or the school and represent well. So I did, and it went over very well. So the next 4, 5, 6 years, I'm not sure, until that show stopped, I went and represented Touchstone, and that's how we forged some alliances there.
Neat, thanks.
You're welcome.
Well, we are lucky to know you.
I consider it the reverse. I'm lucky to know you guys.
Great. I know you've worked on a wide variety of different types of projects. Is there any specific goal, like a white whale type of achievement or goal that you have in your sights?
No, there really isn't. In the country, so many of the top artists, I always considered myself just a workman, and they always yelled at me. And I said, I'm barely more than a laborer. And they said, no, a laborer is someone who works with their hands. A craftsman is someone who works with their hands and their mind. And an artist is someone who works with their hands, their mind, and their heart. You're an artist. But it wasn't a label I put on myself. I have had a little bit of a different road in that I have had to make a living for myself and a family for 40 years. I didn't have anyone else to make a living. So a lot of my jobs were jobs that I just had to take. I wanted to forge, but I would forge and do anything. I do a lot of industrial work and tool work, which is quite enjoyable because it has to be a little bit exacting. I love ornamental work. I think I'm chiefly responsible for Uniontown in the upswing, although there's a lot of great people now that travel through and have helped and contributed work. There's some fabulous people that come to this school to teach, and it's a nice field now. It's fertile, but when I started, it was really dry. I kind of had to start the market and create it because there wasn't much of a blacksmith market. Gene King was in town in Farmington, and that was the top of the mountain. I was the bottom. And Gene had worked for a lot of years, but a lot of Gene's work was farm repair, welding repair, and things like that, because he too had to make a living. The living back then was not in artist blacksmithing. It can be now, but back then it wasn't.
Mhm.
I would like to do a lot of different things, but for me, just about any day in the shop is a good day. And almost anything that I do, I still enjoy, especially forging.
Great. I'm glad to hear that.
Me too.
Well, do you have any words of wisdom that you would have liked to have shared with your younger self or with other aspiring artists today?
I do. On the artistic standpoint, and that's why I'm here to talk about Touchstone, get some help, get it quick, get some skills. You can't just call yourself a blacksmith. That doesn't work. You can't steal the trade. You don't call yourself a welder or a machinist and become one. You have to pay some dues, but you don't have to stumble through it blindly. You can get help and you can get instruction. And like I said, I would have saved years of time and effort if I had had a place like this. And this is such a fabulous place to come to actually learn some work, to get a foundation to build on. So I would tell them all, get to a place, get to a mentor, get to a master, find someone that can help you and teach you. And these schools are fabulous for that. They really are. And this is a great place for it. I would say that. Francis Whitaker was one of the deans of American blacksmiths, and Francis said, life is short and art is long. Get going. So I'd say start. Practically on the business side, I'd say learn how to control your money. That's the secret for everything else after this. Do good work, be honest. Go when you said you will, do what you said you would, do it for the price you said you'd do it for. That's my short class in blacksmith ethics. But be honest, be proud of your work, try to do it well, try to learn and progress. And I think that's the path we should all be on.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Ed. That was fun talking with you, and I appreciate you coming up to chat with us today.
You are quite welcome. It's great fun to talk to you. Thank you for having me.